I thought we'd spend a few minutes today talking about regulation, then deregulation, and how that's affected us. In the early 1900s, right up until the mid-1980s, the trucking industry was regulated. And what that means was that the government controlled the number of licenses and operating authorities they issued, to the point where there were only a few carriers, really. In the 1980s, they decided to deregulate the trucking industry so more people could have more operating authority. The idea of this being that they could lower the cost of consumer goods getting to market because more trucking companies would be able to negotiate better deals with their local manufacturing sectors. So that was the idea behind deregulation. The sad part was that big business saw deregulation as a business opportunity and they took advantage of it. So a few carriers like J.B. Hunt and Schneider and those really big guys, they went, this is great for us. And they dove right into it. So 10 years later, up into the 90s, you see the effects of deregulation. You've got a few huge mega carriers that have basically cut all the rates to get as much freight as they possibly can. But big business, being big business the way it is, money talks. Money's their main goal. So to keep as much money in their pockets as they possibly could, they kept the drivers' wages flat. And this wasn't good for us because the cost of living, as you know, just goes up all the time. So while the wages stayed flat, the cost of living kept going up. So another 10 years down the road, into the 2000s, and what you see here is now you've got what's become a driver shortage because the carriers have kept their wages flat and continued to grow and kept that money and shoved it in their pockets, and the shippers have shoved the money in their pockets because it's all about money. And the cost of moving the goods to market never really improved because the carriers and the shippers kept all the money. And you've got a driver shortage because they phased out all the owner-operators and all the independents because there wasn't enough money in it because they cut the rates so low. So now they're squeezing the drivers as well because they want to keep as much of that money as possible. So now today we've got this driver shortage, as it's called. But truly, there really isn't a driver shortage. There's a driver shortage in the fact that experienced qualified drivers are refusing to drive the trucks for the low wages offered by these big carriers. So it's not truly a driver shortage. There's lots of good drivers out there. They just don't find they're making enough money working for these big carriers. But you know what? The answer is not to work for the big carriers. Forget dry freight and forget the big carriers. Here's how to keep making money. The way around the cheap wages are to seek out the niche markets in trucking. There's trucking out there where they just can't afford to have idiots behind the wheel. Tanker companies, guys hauling hazmat, guys hauling oversized loads, all those types of trucking need experienced, skilled drivers with a brain. They can't just settle for a monkey behind the wheel with a pulse. So these are the markets to seek out. And those carriers, because they cannot afford to lose good guys, are paying their truck drivers better. So what you want to do is approach these niche markets and make sure you're getting paid not only for the miles that you do, but for all the time that you put in. Because there's a lot of sitting time these days between traffic jams and waiting for loads and the new hours of service regulations. You just can't work as hard and as fast as you used to be able to. So the carrier's got to compensate for that by offering money while you're sitting. Deregulation has hurt the average truck driver, but it doesn't have to hurt you. It doesn't have to hit you in the pocketbook. In fact, this may be the perfect storm for good experienced drivers. Seek out these niche markets, go to these smaller carriers that need experienced, skilled guys, and negotiate your own deals. You'll find that they're paying their people not just by the mile, but by the hour as well. And these are the carriers to seek out through this period. Let the cheap freight get hauled by the monkeys. Forget them. You need to make a good wage, and there's still good money in the trucking industry. You've just got to seek it out.